Okay, so the thing about chiffon is it's a very thin material, it's very slippery, and it works in its own right. It's very fluid kind of fabric. You hold it one way and you'll find it sort of floats in all sorts of directions. So the best way to deal with chiffon is to just rip it. Don't cut it, rip it so that you get your first straight edge. So if you rip it like this, what will happen is you'll actually rip the warp threads along the warp threads, and you'll get the weft thread. So that's the thread that goes across. There's the selvage is on the edge, and what you get is a perfect sort of edge. Now, yes, it looks a bit fluffy, but what it means is you've got now a row of stitching exactly on the weave. So then what you need to do is just grab it very gently and roll it up a couple of times. Now, what people worry about is threads puckering and being snagged. Now, if you look here, I'll show you very quickly. What's happened is I have actually snagged the fabric, but that was at the point where I had my scissors. So you need to make sure that you use really good quality sharp scissors to do that. But if I stroke it down like that, gone. So just roll it up very, very carefully a couple of times, and then you can pop a pin in that place. You can use pegs, whatever's easiest for you. So I'm going to put a couple of pins there. Now, I haven't taken it off the roll just yet because I need to rip the other edge. And it's easier for me because I managed to get so many pieces of fabric on the roll. I mean, this fabric's really old, but it's been stored in a shop for very many years. So it's really old fabric, but it's kept its condition. It's very good condition. So I'm only going to do a few bits like that. So I've got about 4 inches of fabric rolled over like that. So all I need to do is just go along that and fold it over as I sew the edge. We're going to make a really simple design. I'm not doing it on this fabric actually. I've got this throwback fabric. It is phenomenal style of fabric. So I'm going to do this. Just roll it against the edge, and this is going to make a lovely top for me. A strip that I ripped off before is a perfect even piece, and that's because I ripped off the sheet before as well rather than cut it. And can you see how throughout the whole of that strip is even? 2 things are demonstrated by that, and one is it's a good quality fabric. So it's a vintage fabric, it's way back from the 80s, but also it shows that ripping definitely does give you a better and a straighter fabric. So I know a lot of people are reluctant to cut fabric because they think it snags, but it's actually the scissors that can snag your fabric. So there you go. You can see there are no snags in there. It's not a beautiful cut finish as if you were cutting with a rotary cutter or with a pair of scissors, but you know it's even. And if you look there, you can see a black line where that thread is missing. So where it didn't cut that top bit because I used a pair of scissors, it has actually pulled the thread out in that section. So there you go. Using the correct needle will make a huge difference to the work. So here I'm using a standard size 60. The 60 is 0.6 millimeters, so it's not a full millimeter thick. The shaft is 0.6. So the bigger the number, so the 8 and the 60, the bigger the number, the thicker the needle. So for a chiffon, you want to go for a fine needle. So as well as using a good needle for chiffon, you want to use a good thread. Now, Gutterman thread is usually my favourite thread to sew with, and I say that. But then you also need to think about the thin fibres in your chiffon. A thick thread is going to be just too heavy. Now, I would suggest if you do get a Gutterman that you go for the sulky. So that's these. They are a little bit finer twist on there. They're rayon 40, so it's a finer twist on that thread. They're usually about 90 on a regular sew all thread. These are a 40 twist as well. So they are finer thread, which means they'll be better for me to use. Unfortunately, I don't have a Gutterman 40, so I'm going to just grab one of these and thread the machine up with this. Right, so when your machine is set up and ready to sew, what I can now do is change the foot if I wanted to. You can buy these rolled hem feet. I don't know if you can buy one for the actual machine, but you can buy generic brand versions of them. And all it is it has this swirly metal construction in the middle of the foot. And what it does is it grabs the fabric and swirls it and hems it as it gets to the needle. These are really fiddly to work with, but we'll give it a shot. With the foot installed, what I need to do is grab two ends of the fabric like this and then just swirl it in to the foot like that. I'm going to start all the way at the other end, so like that. Okay, let's put that foot down and then so it's a bit fiddly. So if you struggle with fiddly things, you might struggle with this. So keep the speed very low. Okay, and once you know you're there and you're caught, and you've got to make sure you exaggerate this swirl on this edge. So it's hard to see, isn't it, whether you're doing a straight line or not. So I'll show you where I'm focusing my attention. I'm focusing my attention here. So see this raw edge here? I'm making sure it hits this wall there. And if you go too fast, you lose it. So careful not to go too fast. And I'll show you what we've got so far. So that's on a stitch 3. And there we go. So it's hard to get it absolutely correct, isn't it? Right, so let me show you what I do. If I take that foot away, come back to my regular foot. Now, I'm not going to get a narrow hem like that. I'm not going to get anything as narrow as that, and it doesn't matter because I don't need anything as narrow as that for my work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to place the fabric like this. I'm going to fold it over about, I think, what's that, 2 millimeters. All right. Then press the foot down. Okay. Go on a really long stitch. So this is called a basting stitch. So the longest stitch your machine allows. Like that. And just baste it down. So we're just holding this stitch into place. We're just holding our hem into place with this stitch. It's a bit of a long-winded task, but if you want good results, sometimes you have to put the effort in. You have to get that elbow grease out and do some work. You can't get great results without putting that work in, and it will look great. Okay, so I've got a good fair amount done there, like that. So that's nicely stitched down, and you can see the tension is messed up because I have a long stitch on there. The tension's messed up. So what you can do is I'm going to grab onto that end and press really, can you see how my finger's gone white? Press really tight and pull that fabric until it's nice and straight. And you know what? If it pops some of the stitches, I don't mind. So pull that fabric, there we go, It's not popped any of the stitches, that's good. That's the quality of thread that I've used. It's a good thread. Okay, so now I've got my chiffon nice and straight. What I can do is I can stitch now, roll it over again, okay, and then stitch close to that folded edge like this. So close to the edge like that. Put the press foot down. Stop using that press foot. And get close to the edge of my fabric. Like that. And then just fold along where it was folded before. Okay. Ignore the row of stitches that you've done. As long as you've done them neat, it's fine, you can use them. But you don't need to worry about it too much. Just get that all nice and level. So now I can see how wide my fabric is going to be, and I'm going to get a straight edge. So that's really important to me, because you do not want a circle skirt looking wavy. You don't want a chiffon scarf being higgledy-piggledy. You want a good finish. So I'm going to reduce the stitch down to 2.5. That's the standard stitch size. I'll lock those stitches. Didn't lock those stitches. Maybe I started the lock feature too late. And then just stitch away. Get yourself a good row of stitches along the edge. I am going to lock them here so I can show you. And look at that. So the tension hasn't got messed up this time. It's given me a good tension. I can see that the fabric is sitting straight. There isn't a problem with it. So these newfangled ideas of these rolled hem, well, they're not new, are they? I've got them in vintage machines. And I just need to grab one of these seam rippers and just pull these huge basting stitches out like this. And it just sort of pulls out like that. And look at that, hey presto. Look at that. So that gives me a really nice finish. It just needs a bit of a steam press and it will sit perfectly. If you feel that's too heavy, if it's still too heavy for you, just increase the stitch length and reduce the tension on your machine. But that's brilliant. Okay, so now onto my dress. I'm going to do that to this fabric here. I'll do it to all 4 edges. So luckily with the selvage, I don't need to baste it because it'll be really easy to do because it's quite a solid line and it will already sit. It needs to be quite wide, this one. I'm not going to trim it away, but I'll just have a wide edge like that. Top stitch that and it will be fine. Do the same method I've shown you here. And on this raw edge here, just do the same method. So fold it over, do a basting stitch, and then fold it over one more time and do a top stitch. If you feel confident, you can just go straight into a top stitch. You don't have to worry about doing a basting stitch. But just remember, a good needle, a good thread, and a slow speed makes all the difference.